Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Brittany Quickcorner. I'm the president and CEO at the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, and I have here with us Vonnie.
Hi, Vonnie Mickelson with the Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for having us, Brittany.
Wonderful. Yeah. So Vonnie and I are excited to kind of co-host this conversation today with our U.S. Senator Ron Wyden. His staff is on the call right now. Senator Wyden got hung up on another call just before this, so we are awaiting his arrival. But Vonnie and I thought that we would take just a couple minutes before Senator Wyden gets here to talk a little bit about some of the work that the chambers have been doing to offer you guys at least a little bit of insight as to kind of the activities that our staff have been working on, and then obviously open it up after this call for you all to send us emails or notes with feedback on things that we could be doing to help you. So I know from the Eugene Chamber perspective, like many of your businesses, we had a pretty immediate need to pivot a lot of the stuff that we were doing. We host a lot of in-person meetings and events and whatnot. So we've postponed the couple big events that we've had scheduled for this fall or for the spring into the fall. And then our staff was able to get these webinars set up. This will be our 8th webinar. So if you have not been able to log on, we have the other 7 up on our website, recorded from previous speakers. So you're welcome to go and watch those. We'll continue these webinars for the foreseeable future. This Friday, we are hosting Pablo Valentine, who's an attorney, a commercial real estate attorney, and Tim Campbell from Campbell Commercial Real Estate to talk about commercial leasing and how you can be working with your landlord or with your property manager to try to figure out your leases as businesses who I know are facing cash flow issues right now. So that's a couple of the stuff that we've been working on. We've also been working, and I know Vonnie has as well, at the state and federal level on some advocacy efforts. And we're going to talk to Senator Wyden about some of those things. At the state level, we're advocating pretty strongly for a postponement of the corporate activity tax. So that first corporate activity tax payment is due April 30th. And so there's coalition of business advocacy groups who are really trying to work with our state delegation to see if we can postpone those payments, because we know a lot of these companies are obviously, like a lot of us, facing cash flow issues. So we'll be giving you updates on that as we have them. Additionally, we have, our website, and I know Springfield does too, set up with resources, so please use that. And if there's specific issues that we can help you out with, we are right now working to try and get in touch with all the local banks to find out the status of the PPP loans at all the different banks around town. We are hearing from a lot of members a lot of frustration with that program and the way that it was rolled out, and we hear you and we feel you. I know my husband's a small business owner, and we spent the weekend trying to figure out how to get him applied for some of these loans. So we are trying to do what we can to at least save you some time, so you don't have to go around and call all the different local banks. So hopefully in the next couple of days, we'll have some sort of summary put together of where folks are at on that. And then for those folks who are banking at a local bank or credit union who isn't offering the PPP loan because they aren't an SBA lender, we're trying to gather some resources for you all to apply as well. So I'll stop there and let Vonnie kind of give an update from the Springfield side, and then hopefully Senator Wyden will be able to join us after that.
Yeah, thank you, Brittany. So you covered a lot of ground there. We've all been covering a lot of ground, and we're certainly appreciative of the support of our members and our community, as well as our economic development partners. I will say, to Brittany's point, this is a heavy lift. We know that because we're talking to you, listening to you, our members. We're not done. The first month was the first month. The packages at the federal level that came down, I know we're trying to sift through that. Can't be fast enough. We'll continue to work both at the state and the federal level, as well as with our local and regional partners, to do what we can. I think that one thing I will call your attention to, I'm sure you may have received it through one of a number of distribution mail lists that you're on, certainly from the Eugene and the Springfield chambers, I know you have, but the state is doing a business impact survey, and this is different from our lane impact survey that we put out pretty quickly with our regional partners early on to understand at the local level what the impacts might be, what you're feeling. But at the state level, it's also important to hear from you and gather that information from you so that we can understand and continue to advocate both at the state and the federal level. So finally, I will say that, like Brittany, we are too working on that CAT tax issue and are in alignment in our positions on that. We're also understanding that as significant as it was, the $2 trillion package from the federal level, it may not be enough to cover a lot of our small business needs. And so we'll continue to advocate for what we need to make sure that we continue to see you on the other side, build that bridge between now and 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from now when we see some recovery. So we're looking at that. The final thing that I'll call your attention to, it's a little off topic for today, but we do have local elections coming up in the near future. So we are watching that. We're publishing a resource page as early as next week. And so I'd like you to keep an eye on that. We're going to focus on Springfield, but we'll also have some regional links up for that. So we've got some forums, some candidate forums. We've got an important mayoral and city council election, as well as other local measures, and hope to help engage and inform our members and our community. So thank you, Brittany. I think I'll turn it back to you, see if we have some Senator Wyden back on.
Yeah, so it looks like one of the folks who are logged on is muted. I'm hitting unmute all, so I'm hoping that works. It might be a setting on your login there. But I think I have a couple of you on the phone. Maybe?
Yeah, so this is Rachel Lang from Senator Wyden's office. I'm on the line, and I think I've got a couple of my other colleagues on, but just by way of a quick introduction, I work on a bunch of issues for Senator Wyden, including small business, specifically right now, trade and technology and telecommunications.
Great, thank you.
And this is Becca Nathanson. I'm also joining from Senator Wyden's office, and I covered the healthcare portfolio as well as the higher education and labor portfolio for Senator Wyden in his personal office in DC.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there anybody else on the line that wants to introduce themselves? No? Okay. So Rachel, are you the one who is, when Senator Wyden gets there, is his video going to be enabled?
I do believe so. Most of us are working from home right now, given the social distancing shelter at home in DC, but I think that's the plan.
Okay. All right. So we'll see what happens when he gets here. So thank you guys so much for jumping on. You know, we thought that to get started until he's able to join us, you know, I don't know which of you would be the best one to do so, but if you wanted to just kind of start by giving us an update of what's been happening for the last couple days, and you know, what is sort of the most recent activity that Senator Wyden's been tracking.
Sure. So I'd be happy to just jump in here. I can talk about the small business section of what's going on. So, I mean, you guys kind of hit the nail on the head when you said that Congress recognized that there is absolutely a problem here and small businesses need our help. And they acted in a really widespread bipartisan fashion with the CARES Act. There were some really big provisions in there, which I know that you guys are familiar with, so I won't take the time now to go over them, but the Paycheck Protection Program, the Emergency Economic Injury Grants, the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, and the debt relief programs that are really, really important to get relief into the hands of the businesses that need them. But I don't have to tell you about what a difficult and slightly convoluted process it has been for applicants to be able to get these funds and for banks and lenders to know how to get the funds out. I think that we've, you know, seen a severe lack of clarity from both Treasury and the SBA, And that's not to say that Treasury and the SBA aren't working hard. They're working round the clock. And we here in Senator Wyden's office and Senator Wyden himself have been in touch with, these departments just pretty much constantly, pretty much every day. He is, fighting to get clarity for various issues that we hear from people in Oregon and across the country about various problems that they have in accessing these funds. So on the small business side, we are doing two things right now. The first is we're working on implementation of the CARES Act and making sure that these programs are working and fixing issues that are coming up every day in both the state and at the national level. We are looking ahead to a possible fourth stimulus package. And so that's when we hear from people where they're not necessarily able to access these programs and they need to. How can we expand and refine and tinker with these programs to make sure that they really help those who need them? So that's where these calls are really, really helpful, quite frankly. I just want to preface the fact that, the CARES Act was a bipartisan, bicameral compromise, and Senator Wyden is one of 100 senators and 535 Congress people in DC. So any package that we all agree on is not going to necessarily be the package that he himself would have written if he had the chance. But it's helpful for us to know what you guys need so that in the next package we can advocate for those needs and make sure that to the best extent possible, all that is included. I'll finish this with just one.
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I'm not sure since you're on the call, it looks like Senator Wyden is here and able to join us. So I just want to make sure that we give him time to introduce, kind of what are you doing, Senator Wyden? What should we know?
What I'm doing is I'm sitting behind my desk.
You're not busy at all, right?
In the Senate Dirksen office building, where I have been pretty much every single day for weeks on end. And this desk where I'm sitting is not far from the Senate Finance Committee room, where I am the ranking Democrat. The chairman is Chuck Grassley. I am the senior Democrat, and we wrote much of the last package as it relates to workers and businesses. And let me just give you a little bit of a flavor of what it is I've been trying to do, and then we'll throw it open to questions. To me, the Oregon economy is about two sides of one coin. One side is about the workers, and they have been laid off through no fault of their own, and now they've lost their wage, and so they're having trouble paying for rent and groceries and medical and all of the essentials. On the other side of the coin are the small businesses, and Oregon is overwhelmingly a small business state. You cover a few big companies, a company like Intel or Precision Cast Parts, or a couple in the metro area, a couple of others around the state. You've covered the big businesses in our state. We're overwhelmingly a small business state. So what I tried to do is focus on helping both the workers and the small businesses. So down the hall, I negotiated the unemployment package with the Trump administration, Secretary of Treasury Steve Mnuchin representing the administration. And what was agreed to is unemployed workers would get their existing unemployment benefits plus $600 more per week, each week for the next 4 months. And for the first time, a lot of workers who traditionally weren't covered would be covered. I'm talking about gig workers and the self-employed and the independent contractor and the freelancer and the part-timer. They all would be covered as well. The unemployment system was set up in the 1930s and nobody had ever heard of a gig worker. And I wanted to make sure that this time they weren't forgotten and they're going to be eligible for unemployment. Then on the business side, on the Finance Committee, we wrote the employee retention credit. That is the part of the package that includes a 50% employee retention payroll tax credit for wages paid to employees during the emergency. It's fully refundable to any business that has a furloughed or reduced workforce as a result of the COVID virus and this pandemic. There are a number of other programs. The Patient Protection Program, PPP, is probably the biggest and the most discussed, providing cash flow assistance through 100% federally guaranteed loans to employers who maintain their payroll during the emergency. There's small business debt relief so that anybody who has an SBA loan is going to get relief on principal, interest, and fees for 6 months. And then the economic injury disaster loans, the EIDL loans, providing emergency funding of up to $10,000 to small businesses and private nonprofits that are supposed to get out the door very quickly. Now, I'm sure that we are going to get many questions here in the course of this program, particularly about those small business loans like the Paycheck Protection Program. And I want you to know I've heard loud and clear from small businesses who say that the loan funds are just frozen, that the small business, small credit organizations and small banks just say that, you know, they can't loan, they don't have the criteria, they don't understand what the federal government is seeking from them. And I have been on the phone to the Treasury Department here in the last few days to say that it's critically important that the Treasury Department send to the small banks, the small lending institutions, send them the message that the point of this part of the bill is to, in effect, produce a kind of timeout to stop the hemorrhaging that workers and small businesses are experiencing. And the point of the federal government as it relates to these small business loans is that they're backed up by the full faith and credit of the United States. And the Treasury Secretary needs to say that and make that clear to the small lenders. And we may have an addition to the package, perhaps sometime in the next day or so, if we can work through all of the challenges on the floor of the House and the Senate. So that is to be debated through the rest of the day, and it's unclear what the schedule might be tomorrow, start of Passover, and we'll have to see what the Senate schedule is tomorrow. Okay, let's use that as kind of a opening salvo. And the Eugene and Springfield chambers have such a long history of doing good work and being community-minded and practicing what I call the Oregon way. Before I wrap up, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that wonderful tradition. It's really Oregon at its best, the Eugene and Springfield chambers. Okay, let's see what kind of questions we have for a few minutes.
Thank you, Senator Wyden. I really appreciate that. I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about Oregon businesses, and specifically in Lane County, we are a community of small business. And so a lot of the topics you touched on are the hot topics that we've been hearing from our members. Specifically, you know, in the last couple of days, folks have been pretty frustrated with the rollout of the Paycheck Protection Program and feeling both on the banking side and on the business side who are applying for the loans, like they don't know how to navigate it. It feels like they're getting a different answer every time they talk to somebody. One question I did get from a member this morning, they were told that just last night a ruling came out from the Treasury Department that owners who take a distribution for their own paycheck aren't eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program as part of the refund. So that was one question that I got that I promised I would send your way, whether it's for you or your staff. I know that there's going to be a lot of businesses that their owners are not going to be able to make a paycheck anymore, and they're on the payroll like the rest of their staff are. So that's a pretty concern.
I hadn't interpreted it that way. Can we try while we're online with them? Let's see if we can find that out while we're online, because I hadn't interpreted it that way, but I know some people had, and obviously for Oregon small businesses, that's pretty close to a showstopper.
Yeah.
Because the owner is also an employee, and the owner probably has taken a pay cut already based on everything I'm hearing from Oregon small businesses. So let us see if we can run that down while we're in fact talking, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and if we can't by the time we're done, we'll have it to you quickly, because I hadn't interpreted it that way, but I had heard small businesses describing it just as you did. So we got to get this run to ground.
Yeah, Bonnie, I'll toss it to you. We'll kind of go back and forth with our list here.
Sure. So thank you so much, Senator Wyden. We appreciate you making yourself available, and couldn't agree more that the Springfield and Eugene chambers are really working the best we can in the Oregon way, and our small businesses are certainly on the front lines. I'd like to go ahead. Looks like we have a couple of questions coming in. So if it's okay with you, Senator Wyden, I'll start with this one here. This is from David, and he asks, our Eugene company is waiting for a large contract from a U.S. government agency to be awarded to us. The project received internal approvals last fall, but the final approval process is dragging on. This contract will be very helpful given that much of our revenue has disappeared in this crisis. Is there any initiative to encourage U.S. government agencies to expedite the awarding of contracts that are already in the pipeline?
Well, let's if we're going to talk about initiative, let's talk about Ron Wyden and June Chada taking the initiative. I think maybe is June there today?
She was.
I think she's listening in.
I am here. I'm here.
June, wonderful. Why don't you and I follow this question up? Because that is, I don't want to put this task on anybody else. I'm glad to work with June to follow up on where this is. I think it should be fairly obvious that a whole lot of what was happening in government prior to particularly early March, when the virus began to hit our country so hard, has really slowed down. But that's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get you a report and expedite it, because it sounds like the work for all practical purposes was completed, was on track. You were going to be the person who was asking the question. You were going to be the applicant who prevailed on the merits. And now you want a quaint idea, figure out where it is so that you can hopefully get the revenue and get about your business. So to me, this is kind of Senate follow-up 101. You all are so lucky to have June, who's just one of the superstars in terms of trying to be responsive to small business concerns. So between June and I, we'll get that call made. If not by close of business today, we'll get it made tomorrow.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah.
So John asks, the small business owners, there's a lot of small business owners who are concerned that the PPP funds are going to be all used up, and the folks who are late to apply won't be able to participate. Specifically, there's, at least in our community, I can speak from experience. My husband is a small business owner in our community, and we bank with a local credit union for his business, and they weren't an SBA lender. And so the SBA lenders in our community have, rightly so, opened up the applications for their members. And so there's quite a few businesses who have not found a place to apply for these loans. And so they're kind of late in the process from a lot of other companies. So I'm just curious, how can we message to the businesses who haven't been able to get through that there's still some funding left for them?
Well, that's something they're going to hear about and read about a lot over the next 72 hours, because what happened earlier this week is Mitch McConnell speaking on behalf as the majority leader, indicating that he wanted to significantly expand the PPP program. We on our side really hadn't heard it or weren't involved in those discussions, but we made it clear that we want to see the program expanded too. There are other things that need to be done as well. So those are the discussions going on right now. But the folks who are asking that question about the PPP, will it be expanded? I will tell you my prediction is A, yes, and B, soon. There's going to have to be some back and forth in the Senate with respect to the details.
Thank you.
So Senator Wyden, there are a number of questions. I think you'd be really good. You were behind the second bill that came out, I think it's specifically, but on the unemployment insurance and the expansion program. So there are a couple of questions here. I'll see if I can kind of combine them. There's a little bit of either misunderstanding or lack of clarity, right, at the ground level for employers, and understandably so. So this might be a good opportunity to clarify who exactly that $600 boost that we're hearing about, that extra $600 weekly unemployment benefits goes to. Let's clarify who that happens.
Go ahead.
And if it happens, are furloughed, so furloughed workers or those that we have to lay off will, maybe earn more not working than they do working. So it's kind of a catch-22. We want them working. We want them, employers want to take advantage as they can of this layoff aversion and paycheck protection programs. But how is that how are we to sift through all of that?
Well, let me first tell everybody how the $600 was arrived at, because that has generated a fair amount of discussion. And I just talked with him today, Secretary Scalia. He was involved in the discussions. In the finance room down the corridor, Secretary Scalia said the systems at the state level are just too broken and this is too complicated. They won't be able to get checks out quickly. And that's, of course, what unemployed workers need in order to pay the rent and groceries and pay for essentials. So we did some checking with the states, and a number of states said, look, we can get the system up and running for this. And we went back and forth, but Secretary Scalia said no. So I said, all right, given the fact that these workers need the money, and I've just actually been told today that a couple of states are already seeing the $600 checks on the way into workers' hands. We said, for purposes of 4 months, so this is a temporary program, we're going to have rough justice. What we'll do is take a national average, which will mean that some workers will get less than what they were making in their wage, and some workers will get more. But Secretary Mnuchin, speaking for the Trump administration, wondered how much this would cost. He thought it would cost too much, and I pulled out my smartphone and I took out I used the calculator application, and we agreed. So that's what the amount is for the next 4 months, and it was the only way, given how broken these systems are, that those checks could get out in a matter of a few weeks. And by the way, the department in Oregon, the employment office, is really, those people are working their heads off. Mm-hmm. We talked to them just yesterday, putting in prodigious hours, trying to get this together to get out both the unemployment and the additional money. And as far as the way the program works, is the people who are laid off through no fault of their own are the ones that are, eligible. Some other modest exceptions, but that's basically the people who are eligible. And then for the first time, the gig workers, and this was at my insistence, the gig workers, the freelancers, the independent contractors, the self-employed, all those people would be eligible as well. So I'm hoping that Oregonians will get those checks here in the next, couple of weeks. That's what I just was on the phone with them just before this call and said, I've got workers who are just, I've been reading national stories about how families are telling their kid, don't eat so much this month. So this is really urgent business. I just got off the phone with the Secretary of Labor on it. I do want people to know, apropos of your question, that the checks are retroactive to the day when the states and the federal government entered into the guidance, which is largely towards the end of March. So basically the checks will be retroactive. Hope that answers your question.
Great.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Senator Wyden. Thank you.
Hard to keep us all straight. All those folks in blue suits.
Yeah,
You're very generous.
So a couple questions, very similar. Seems like this is really the biggest, the hottest topic that we're hearing from folks is around the PPP loan, and then also the economic injury and disaster loan through the SBA as well. The messaging that went out when this was passed originally is that there was this $10,000 or up to $10,000 grant that when you applied for the EIDL, you could mark that you wanted this, essentially this grant. And we were told that we'd get it within 3 days of application. A lot of businesses still kind of sitting, waiting to hear where that money is. And I'm just curious if have any sort of insight into.
Have they been waiting? Have they been waiting over a week?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, you get us the loan. We'll be making calls on that.
Yeah.
That's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, I can speak from the chamber. We applied last week and haven't heard or seen anything. And it sounds like
June and I will be on the phone on that, because that the whole point of that was to say, this is a disaster. This is an emergency. That's why the amount was chosen. Obviously, it's a significant sum of money, but in a $2 trillion bill, this is not, a showstopper item. So it was supposed to be within 3 days. And obviously, if folks are not getting it, we'll follow that up too.
Thank you. Yeah, Ty, who asked the question, said it's been 7 business days for them and they haven't heard anything.
That's just unacceptable. We'll follow it up.
Thank you.
I appreciate that as well, Senator. As Brittany said, Chambers of Commerce were on the front lines, and we haven't received a whole lot of, to support our own operations, a whole lot of positive news that Chambers of Commerce, local Chambers of Commerce across the country, including some 80 plus in Oregon, who are working to make sure these our small businesses succeed and building that bridge between the relief packages.
We got some coverage for the nonprofits and for chambers, and I'll have June get that to you too.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. So I have a question here from Charlie. Charlie is interested in the next stimulus round that may involve something from infrastructure, and wondering if you can give us a broad stroke view of what infrastructure might be focused on, and for example, transportation system, public utilities. What sense do you have?
My sense is that the fourth package is probably not going to be infrastructure. I think it will probably be more of what's in the third package as it relates to the PPP for small business, additional assistance for workers, a very strong focus on healthcare, because we understand we've got this problem because we've got to beat this virus, and we're talking about testing and help for the hospitals and the like. So I don't anticipate in this package, and there's been a fair amount of discussion, a big infrastructure effort. I just don't think there's time to do it.
Matt Keating asks, as an LCC, a Lane Community College board member, it's clear when the economy is crumbling, enrollment at Oregon's 17 community colleges tends to increase, kind of an inverse relationship there. But in the meantime, he asks, what support from the federal government will help community colleges keep the lights on, retain employees, and pay bills before the likely fall or winter surge. In an effort to boost our local economy, are you working on ways for the federal government to provide additional relief for local businesses through tax credits, perhaps who hire local students or graduates?
I'm certainly supportive of more help for colleges. And I thought in the last package, there should have been assistance, to colleges. As you know, there was some for students in terms of debt relief and the like. I have not gotten before that suggestion of tax credits for employers that hire students to work for them. But I think as the author of the employee retention credit, we might see if we could take an additional step to give a break to employers under that for hiring students. So I'm going to tell the staff to look in to that, whether under the employee retention credit, it's a little bit of a different direction, but the concept is basically the same. They want to hire, workers and particularly students who be hard hit as we go into the winter term and short of funds.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to have to zip pretty soon. Anybody not get a question that was particularly important to them?
You know what? I've got one more, Senator Wyden.
Sure.
This one should be fairly simple. We'll see. So Ryan wants to know for those that are on reduced hours, so they went from say 40 hours a week to 24 hours a week, or do they still qualify for the additional $600 unemployment benefit?
Yeah, the person, the part-timer who has faced this kind of furlough is also going to get assistance as well. We can't kind of from the seat of our pants walk through all the formula, but if Ryan will get that to us, we'll be glad to get that to you. And I see the staff scribbling an additional note on I guess it's on something else. We'll get that to you, but if somebody has lost a significant amount of hours, they're going to be able to get some help.
Thank you. I have one last question from Seth, who posted on the live stream. Our company's payroll has changed significantly over the past year, resulting in our PPP eligibility being lower than what their current payroll needs are. Is there any future consideration of linking PPP eligibility to their current payroll versus last year's?
That's interesting. I think that apropos of are trying to get additional funds for COVID-4, the time measure that you're talking about which payroll to have it apply certainly makes sense. And obviously this payroll is going to be different than the previous one. So message sent. Now, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to have Rachel Kaus stay with you. Rachel Lane? Oh, I've got several Rachels. Rachel Lane will stay on and try and answer additional questions, but June and I have got a lot of work to do in terms of follow-up, and we'll get on it, okay?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Senator Wyden. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Big thanks to Eugene and Springfield. You all are the gold standard for community involvement, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, June.
Okay.
So it sounds like Rachel is still on the call. So if folks who are on still have things that you guys want to get out there, it sounds like if they aren't able to answer the question now, their staff and Senator Wyden are really responsive to trying to get some of those things answered. I know, Vani, you had a list of things that that your board had kind of put together beforehand. So if you have any additional ones.
Yeah, thank you, Brittany. Let me go back and take a look at if there's any interesting ones. One of the things that I think those businesses, and there are many who are still open and have employees, some of our smaller even, but small mid-sized manufacturing, food and beverage services, grocers, et cetera, where, we hear from those managers and CEOs that their employees are concerned. They're scared what they hear. And so I think the question was twofold. What are the efforts or what are you hearing about broader testing? And is there any other advice that you might have for those employers to, help address some of those real logistical, I think, health concerns on site.
Yeah, I don't know, Rachel, I unmuted you. I don't know if you or one of the other staff has insight to the testing question.
Hi, folks. This is Becca Nathanson. I can speak to that a little bit. I think, we are in a position, and I feel like this is going to be somewhat of a frustrating answer, so just want to be upfront about that. But we're in a position where, we have a real national lack of access to good quality and reliable testing for COVID. And Senator Wyden has known this for a long time and has been, pulling out all the stops to try to get testing and supplies related to testing to Oregon. So that means, calling the vice president, calling the Health and Human Services secretary, the head of FEMA, who's in charge of the national stockpile, talking with companies that are, producing tests and swabs and reagents in the bags they come in. But there's no question that we have a real national problem when it comes to access to COVID testing. Senator Wyden was able to get, several provisions both in the second and third package that, theoretically would make it so that you're not, paying for testing. So that's great for employees. But you have to be able to find a test and get yourself tested for that to matter. So I think it is safe to say that in COVID-4, there will be a real focus on increasing access to testing, and rest assured that Senator Wyden, understands that this is a massive issue and will continue pulling out all the stops, both talking to administration officials and also talking to private companies who are developing this stuff to make sure that products get to Oregon and into the hands of healthcare providers, in Oregon who can actually get folks tested. So I hope that's helpful.
Great, thank you. Colleen Lawson, I see that you have your hand raised. If you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat and we can get that question over to Senator Wyden staff. No, it might have been an accidental hand raise. Maybe you're just stretching. So I'm curious from any of the staff members, what's the conversation like around helping businesses and people kind of re-enter the workforce and get back to normal? There's a lot of obviously like immediate response work coming or happening right now, but I'm curious about when we move into recovery mode and really trying to recover our local economies. Are there any conversations about that happening right now?
So I can just start a little bit. Part of the thing that we know and that we've reiterated a couple times is that the current package is just one effort out of what we think will be many. And our first priority right now is making sure that people are safe and healthy so that we can address the health impacts of this crisis, because if that doesn't happen, then we will never, return to normalcy. There are a couple of things in the package that encourage employees to be able to stay on staff and maybe even get rehired. For the PPP program, businesses can get loan forgiveness if they do rehire employees by June 30th. So that's one thing that we hope will be effective in that. And we're looking for ideas in the next few stimulus packages as well.
Kind of as a follow-up, I know that a lot of these calls are being made at the local or at least the state level, but I'm just curious if there's any conversations at the federal level with our Congress representatives about what reentry will look like. So moving from kind of the stay at home, stay safe to opening it back up. Are we thinking it would just sort of be open broad and back to normal and folks can have big events and whatnot? Or are people talking about it being more phased in? And again, I know a lot of these conversations and the final decisions are being made at the state level, but I just didn't know if you guys had heard anything.
You know, this is Becca. Unfortunately, I don't think we've quite gotten to that point in terms of what we've heard from the state yet.
Yeah.
I think they're still really focused on properly implementing social distancing and making sure that you know, is being adhered to as much as possible. And you know, I hope this is helpful, but our staff and Senator Wyden are in constant contact with the Oregon Health Authority, with the governor's office, and with, you know, their whole team responding to this. And so we have a daily call with them, and I'm happy to start asking those questions. But I do think that we're not quite to that point yet.
Yeah, I will. And again, Bonnie, sorry, I'll let you pop over to you. I will. So one of the reasons that this is being asked I've talked to a handful of businesses, specifically those who were totally shut down through this. When they've been applying for the PPP loan, it's for an 8-week period after the grant is given or the loan is given. And some of these businesses are worried that they won't be back open in 8 weeks. And so that funding,
Right.
they won't actually have staff to be paying, and so they won't be getting the funding that they're needing. So I think there's just a lot of uncertainty out there where, you know, the ideas that the PPP loan was going to be helpful, and specifically restaurants and hospitality industry businesses, they're worried that it's not actually going to have the impact that folks intended for it to have, just because they're still going to be closed 8 weeks from when they get their loan. So that's just a concern that I'm hearing a lot about.
No, absolutely. And, you know, I think that is not lost on any of us or Senator Wyden. And, you know, I think Rachel made a really good point earlier, which is that, you know, COVID-3, the CARES Act, where the PPP loan was established, is, you know, what we hope to be, you know, one of many responses at the federal level to this. And we by no means think that our job is done in terms of providing relief to folks. So, you know, this is just part of our marching orders for the next package, is thinking through, you know, if folks are still needing to stay home, what does relief look like for businesses?
Great, thank you.
So I would encourage anyone who's listening live to be sure, if we missed one of your questions or it didn't get answered, be sure and shoot it over. We have a couple of minutes still to make sure we get that in. Obviously, we have an opportunity to respond offline as well, I think, correct, Brittany?
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and ask this question, or bring this question up, and see where we can go with it. So this was a question about some states. So what essentially what are you hearing again about more on the national level? Some states are closing down construction sites for all but the construction of low-income housing. And do you believe this is going to be more widespread? I don't believe it's hit, or I haven't heard it in discussions here in Oregon yet. However, we do have a number of companies, including a large wood products manufacturing sector, whose companies could be disrupted by this a broader sort of closure of construction sites across the nation. So I'm just wondering if you've heard anything about that, and what we maybe need to be paying attention to that is maybe in our, you know, not too distant future, if in fact something like that does expand to more states.
This is Becca again, and full disclosure, I do not handle the sort of housing and infrastructure portfolio for Senator Wyden, but you know, we definitely understand that we are seeing, you know, construction stop around the country, and that's something that, you know, we'll continue to pay very close attention to as things kind of progress over the next couple weeks in Oregon. So. The other thing is that, you know, if you or anyone wants follow up to this, I'm happy to put you in touch with our staffers who know a bit more about this and are tracking it a little more closely.
I appreciate that, Rachel. Yes, definitely. We'll follow up offline. Thank you so much.
Ron asked, where do we direct problems with the EIDL application? They said was accepted on March 31st, but no information about what's happening next. I assume that what I'm going to let everybody know who's on the call is that we will do our best to follow up with Wyden's office on some of these questions that kind of were left hanging a little bit to see if they can help us find answers, and then I'll send those answers out to everybody. But specifically, if folks want to do follow up themselves, is there any advice you guys have?
Sure. So this is, I just want to say, Senator Wyden said this too, but this is a concern that we're hearing a lot from a lot of people. And Senator Wyden is talking to folks at the SBA and Treasury Secretary Mnuchin to try to hammer these details out and get clarity. In the meantime, the best place that you all can go to is the district SBA office. The director is Martin. I'm sure a lot of you guys have already worked with him, and he's pretty responsive, as well as definitely let the field reps in the various, June is great, as you guys know, and if you're in any other areas, which I don't think you guys are, that's always good for us to flag, but the district SBA is a great place to start.
Yeah, and Ron, we'll do some follow up with them as well today, just to try to ask broadly. But we can also send out the contact for that district rep if you want to reach out individually. I don't see any other questions, so I'm good to kind of wrap this up. I don't know, Vonnie, if you have some closing thoughts you want to make first, or.
Certainly, again, I just reiterate how much we appreciate the partnership with our businesses, with our economic development partners, chambers across Lane County, as well as the state, as well as nationally. Certainly understand that everybody's under a lot of pressure and a lot of anxiety out there and uncertainty, and we do hear you, we do see you. Sometimes we're behind Zoom windows, but we're still here and we're still working hard. I just call everyone's attention to the resources that your chamber, whoever you're a member of, your chamber has. We can either point you in a direction if we can't answer your questions directly, or we're here to listen and problem solve and work through them with you. So Springfield's website is springfield-chamber.org. And look forward to seeing everyone at the next one of these that we do. And thank you, Brittany, so much for hosting this today.
Yeah, of course. I want to echo Vonnie's sentiments and also add, which I'm sure she would agree, that in this time, it was really important for our chamber to make sure that obviously we were doing everything we can to support our members, but we know that the broad business community is being impacted by everything that's going on. And so we've made an effort to expand all of the things that we're doing as far as assistance to anyone who's in the business community, whether you're a chamber member or not. But I do want to just say a huge thank you to the chamber members who have continued to maintain their memberships with us. We were really our staff was overjoyed as we were continuing to receive membership investments, and we're able to do what we do because you guys are collectively investing in this work. So I just want to say thank you. It means a lot, and we're going to get through this together. It's going to be a little rocky for all of us. Vonnie and I feel your pain a little bit running an organization, but we want to be here with you guys and help you however we can. So feel free to reach out. And we'll chat with you all later. This webinar will be recorded and posted on our websites, and we are open for questions. So there's a couple that have come through that we'll try to get answered and send back your way. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Senator Wyden's staff. I know there's a couple of you still on. Thank you so much for sticking around and helping to answer some questions.
Oh yeah,
thank you, and stay safe.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, goodbye,
Take
everybody.
care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Brittany. Thanks, Vonnie.